Our guest today is Ian Green, a longtime friend and supporter of HGMI. Today we will talk about his life, his exciting world that takes him all over the world, and why he has such a dedicated heart for HGMI and the Roma people in Hungary. So, Ian, it's a very special day today. Usually our guests are Hungarians. You're the first foreigner, to be honest. Can you tell a little bit about yourself, who you are, how you grew up, your background, your family as a child back then, and your family right now?
Sure. It's a real pleasure to be with you at HGMI today. So I was brought up in Wales. Now, Wales is not England. Wales, if you call me English, I call you Romanian. And so two different countries. So brought up there, was there until about 18 years of age. I have three other siblings. I'm the youngest one of all. I am the first one in my family that came to faith in Jesus. I went off to Bible college at 18. And studied there for 2 years. Then I became a youth pastor just outside of Birmingham and did that for about 6.5 years. And then the denomination that I belong to, the Assemblies of God in England, they invited me to be the National Youth Director. And that was a really interesting experience. They hadn't had anybody in that role for about 10 years, so it was absolutely impossible to fail. But I loved the job. It was fantastic. And so I've got some pioneer juice inside of me, and so it allowed me to pioneer lots of different things. Leadership training for youth leaders and children's workers, pioneered a schools department that we trained businessmen to go into high schools to take a morning assembly. Any week we would speak to maybe 2,500 young people in school. Pioneered a short-term missions organization in that, where we took teams all over the world. It was a really exciting time. And then coming to the end of that, which I didn't know was the end of that, I took a short visit. The wall had just come down, and I took a short visit into, it was Czechoslovakia then, they hadn't split, and then back into Hungary. That was my first taste of Hungary. That was in 1991. So I've been coming back here a long time. And so fell in love with the country, fell in love with the people, saw there was a tremendous need here to do youth leadership development. So did that for a number of years. After I'd left the National Youth Department, pioneered an organization called Next Level International, working in 16 or 17 different countries in Central and Eastern Europe. Starting with youth leadership training, then we began to understand they were the emerging new leaders of the church. And so we added to that pastoral training and leadership training. We had conferences, we had courses to help people do that. And we did that right in Hungary right up until 1996. We also started a church planting project in Budapest as well during that season. And so that led me into all kinds of things. I probably, in the early years of that ministry, I traveled about 43 days a month. 43 days a month? That's not possible.
Oh, yeah. Maybe a year?
No, it was 43 weeks in a year. 43 weeks.
Oh, wow. So 9 weeks at home, 43 weeks on the road.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. I have some questions about what you do, but before I ask you that, you mentioned that you did not grow up in a Christian home, and you were the first person to come to Christ from in your family.
Yeah.
How did you meet Jesus, and How did your family react to that?
Okay, so in our little community, I belong in a little village, maybe 3,000-4,000 people, and they had a youth center there in the Methodist church. And I went there, and the leader of the youth club, he was quite immoral. He was on drugs. But he came in one day and said he'd come to Jesus. And we were all shocked. We were all absolutely shocked. And then he began to share his faith with us. And probably after about 6 months of debating back and forth with him, I gave over my life to Jesus. Now, it was quite a radical conversion. I was only 14 years of age at the time. And I think my parents were a little worried. They think I got religious mania. I'm just, when I'm into something, I'm passionate. I'm full on 100%, and so it took a long time for them to get used to me having faith. And even when I went to Bible college, that was a real big problem for them, because they knew that if I went to Bible college and I became a pastor or a church leader, I wouldn't get paid very much, and that wasn't a good idea for them. Anyway, needless to say, we did that. It was that we had some quite difficult years in the family, but in the end they respected me and they respected my faith.
And did anyone else become Christian in your family?
So I don't know how much time we have, but let me just tell you one story of how my mother came to Jesus. So she's on a deathbed, she's dying with cancer. And throughout my Christian life, up until then, 39 years, I'd been following Jesus, and she'd not come to faith. And I realized we don't have a lot of time left now. And so I visited in the hospital, and her mind was very sharp, and she's really interested in politics, and she's telling me what was bad with the government and what they need to change. And I'm trying to move the conversation around to Jesus, and she's actually having none of it. She's actually having none of it. In the end, she gets very ill, and she's lying on a bed, and the nurses say probably, we don't know if it's 48 hours or 12 hours. She could be gone very, very soon, and she's almost semi-unconscious, and I'm there with her in the room, and I'm holding her hand, and I'm saying, Mum, it's really time for you to give your life to Jesus. Now is the time. You really need to do that. And if you want to do that, then just squeeze my hand. Nothing happened. So I told her how much I loved her, told her that appreciate all that she'd done in my life, but Mum, this is the time. You're about to leave this life, and you're going into the next life, and you need to know that you're going to meet Jesus on the other side, and you need to say yes to Jesus. If you want to say yes to Jesus, then squeeze my hand. Nothing. So I go through it all over again, and I say, Mum, it's really time for you to come to Jesus now, and really, this is not the time for you to be this stubborn. So, of course, some of my relatives says, "What are you doing? Like she's unconscious." Well, some people before they pass, they still can hear things, and so I'm just talking to Mum. I'm thinking she's hearing me, and so I go through the whole thing. I says, Mum, if now is the time. It's not time to be stubborn. It's now to give your life to Jesus. Jesus is waiting for you on the other side. He's ready to hug you and welcome you home. And so I says, it's time to say yes to Jesus. And at that, she lifted herself up off the bed, opened her eyes, and said, yes.
Wow, that's
and then
wonderful.
Lay her head back on the pillow and went to be with the Lord.
It's a very wonderful and powerful story to share.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm still working on lots of my other parts of my family.
But you have one win.
Yeah, great win for
Wonderful.
sure.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you were traveling for 43 weeks out of the 52 weeks of the year. And you have a family of your own. How did they like it?
Well, initially I didn't. There was just me and my wife. And we had to do that extreme travel because we were raising money to do our projects in Eastern Europe. And I had no salary, so I was raising money to keep us alive. My wife she was a teacher, so she covered some of the basic needs of the family. And so when our first child came along, Sophie, we cut back to 26 weeks of the year.
Just half.
And then my wife and my daughter, they came with me probably half of those weeks with me. So that made it much easier. So we were building networks of people that were interested in supporting what we were doing in Eastern Europe. We needed teams to come and do outreaches. We needed money to support church planters. We needed sponsors for our leadership training conferences. And so it just demanded that until we got some momentum going. And after probably 5 years, then we added more staff to us. And in the end, we had about 32 staff working for us. Everybody was self-supported. No one was paid by the organization. We all lived by faith. But it was a fantastic season. And so over maybe 20 plus years, we systematically trained about 10,000 leaders and attempted to plant about 200 churches, mainly in cities where there were no known Christians.
Wow, that's an impressive work. Busy life for sure, exciting. I know a lot of travel can be very exhausting, especially when you have a young family, but it is very, very impressive when you can keep up. When you have the energy and the passion to do all of these things. Now, you mentioned that you've slowed down a little bit, but still when I talk to you or when I go to your website and I see all the things you do, you are an author, a coach, an international speaker, a networker, and many more things. How does a week look like for you when you work, or a month? What are all the things that you do?
So there's no week the same, right? Because of all those various things that you mentioned. There are coaching clients that I have every month. And so that's routine in terms, if I'm traveling, then we have to move those dates around. It's not always possible to be on the last Wednesday of the month or whatever. Then through COVID, I changed a lot of my habits. And so I found that you can actually network through Zoom. And so a lot of my networking ended up going through Zoom. And because probably over 30 years, I've repeatedly gone back to the same towns, churches, and cities. I've never wanted to build, say, 1,000 connections of churches. I wanted to build a relationship with churches and with businesses and with people. So I would end up going repeatedly back to those same places. So there's one church in Canada, in Calgary. I went there every year for 19 years. The last weekend of January. It was cold. And so, but they had great skiing in the area. So I would go a few days early and go skiing. I've been to a place called Banff for a few days. It was fantastic. So that ended up changing numbers of things. When I kind of gave away the charity Next Level International, and I'd already started another organization called the Proton Foundation, which was much more of a holistic approach to mission. So previously it was getting people saved, get them into a church, etc. This became more holistic in terms of we were looking at the body, soul, and spirit. So we would say it's the whole gospel for the whole person, for the whole city. Mm-hmm. And so when we started doing that, our trajectories changed. It was no longer trying to get people into a room. It was trying to get Jesus into the city. And it was at that point I re-engaged with HGMI because this is also a very holistic organization. And so there was lots of mutual sharing and learning that we had with each other, which was quite fantastic.
But how did you meet HGMI, or how did you get connected with HGMI in the first place?
So in the first place, it was back in 1992 that Albert Durko, the CEO, he was in my leadership training conferences that we started then all those years ago. And then maybe 8 or 9 years ago, I was doing something in Romania, in Oradea, and a couple of people from HGMI came over. There's, I think, there's a lady called Rita, and I can't remember who the guy's name was. And they said, "Oh, you need to come and talk to Albert again." And in between, Albert had already contacted me saying, "Ian, you need to come and help us." I'm going, "Come and help you? You seem to be doing pretty fine to me." And so I said, "Well, let me come for 2 or 3 days and I'll have a look and assess to see if I have the skills and the abilities to help you." So that was probably 6 or 7 years ago when that happened. And so been engaged ever since. I coach Albert. I helped to start to bring some organizational change in the organization. In the end, I said, you need to get someone locally. So I think they partner now with a local university. And then we started to look at the mission side of the organization and had a more of a kingdom-centric approach rather than a church-centric approach to that.
And I'm sure that there are many organizations that you cross paths with. And I'm sure many of them are very exciting. They are doing great work, but you still decided to stick with us. What is the reason for it? What do you see in HGMI that makes you want to work with us?
I love the mission. I love the vision. I love that you go to parts of society that most people would ignore. I love that you look to do practical things for people, particularly in many of the Roma villages that I've visited, with community hubs now with washing machines and cookers and whatever. Mm-hmm. I just love the practical nature of what you do to help people to understand there's a God in heaven that loves them, and we are going to bring heaven down to earth. For a lot of my life, I was trying to get people into heaven. But now I understand the job is to get heaven down to earth and to get heaven into people and not just people into heaven.
And I'm sure you have some favorite projects that we do. I know you know most of our projects or most of the things and areas where we work. Which ones are your favorite?
Well, as you say, there are a lot. I love what you did with the Ukrainian refugees. That was fantastic, and I had the ability to get Samaritan's Purse to partner with you, and that was just a fantastic win-win for both organizations. I guess the community transformational project, I really love that because that was a dialogue for maybe 2 to 3 years of changing our thinking from just getting people into a room to getting Jesus into the village or into the community. And so although that took a lot of persuading and discussing and mind changing for lots of people, I think I love that. I love that there's a thought of multiplication inside that project. So not just happy to reach in one village, but already built into the training process is the ability that those groups can multiply because people are always in training. And again, I guess I love it because of the holistic nature. We know people need Jesus, but people need other things as well. And on the way to them coming to Jesus, we can still bless them and help them and show them the goodness and the kindness of God. I guess one of my favorite Bible verses is, "It's the goodness of God leads people to repentance." And so we're always trying to make Jesus irresistible.
And you really partnered with HGMI in the past 6, 7, 8 years. So you walked alongside us. You've seen ups and downs. Can you mention some of the wins you saw in the past few years?
Yeah, I think one of the big wins is the courage that Albert has found to change the infrastructure of the organization. So when I was coming, I was saying, but everything's in silos. You have the education department, you have the business department, humanitarian department, a social department. This is like, it's one organization, and we really need to feed off one another because everybody has skills and we're not capitalizing on that. So one of the big things I think I've noticed is that the courage to change how the organization was run for 25 years, to have the ability to go, no, we bring it into the 21st century. We're going to be more effective. We're going to be more focused. We're going to be more energized as we work together more in team and not just in singular units. So that would be number one. I think number two, the continual vision of how we reach people. That's always incredibly inspiring. Of course, it's through an holistic prism now, a holistic paradigm now. But I think the deep heart that the organization has for people above processes, above programs, above anything else, I think they are the two impressive things for me. And that's the reason why I love working with HGMI.
And we really like that you always have encouraging words for us, and you have just an overall passion in life, and it is very contagious. I think I can say that for everyone. So let's say you meet someone who doesn't know HGMI, and you just want to tell them who we are. What would you tell them?
So I say, look, I'm working with an amazing organization in Hungary. I give them the big picture. I say, they deliver 6,500 Meals on Wheels a day. They do 3,500 home care visits. But really what they do is they help the poorest of the poor to come to faith and also to find a better way of life. They have an education department that actually is inspiring people that have never had an education to get an education. If they want to progress in life, in this life, they need to do that. So I can't see why you wouldn't want to help them. I mean, I can't see why you wouldn't want to say, tell me more, Ian, I need to do something. And so I kind of put some bait there on the table, and then we see where that goes.
And you're doing a great job in that, or great work in that for sure. We can see the results. And, our motto is hope does not disappoint. And also our school and even our website is called Hopeful News. So an overarching theme of HGMI is hope.
Yeah.
The hope that we have to hold on to. And when you look at our future, our organization's future, what brings you hope?
Oh, I just think the intentionality of how you operate. You know where you're going. You know what you want to achieve. There's obviously now leadership tracks of development inside the organization and outside the organization. And so for me, it feels as if you are continuing to build not only sustainability, but expansion. And so I have a lot of hope for HGMI that we're just at the beginning of the journey. We're not at the end of it. We're at the beginning of the journey, and all the best days are still yet to come.
And then the same question goes for you. What is the hope that you have for your future, for your life?
So I get mentoring myself, and so my mentor said to me maybe 5 or 6 years ago, "So Ian, you've done a lot of good things in your life. You've built organizations, you've started charities, you've been a church leader, blah blah blah." And so it says, now in this next phase of your life, this is what you need to do. The graces that are on you need to find other people and put those graces on them, so that when you are out of the way, the grace keeps on working. And so I've actually limited my time and effort and energy and focus just to 4 or 5 organizations or people. And of course, HMI is one of them.
Well, that's wonderful news. Thank you for picking us to be one of those organizations. And you spent a couple of days here. This is your third day here. And then, of course, you had a lot of conversations. Probably you got tired. You still have a day of travel ahead of you. And then I'm sure you're ready to be back home with your family. But when you get home, looking back to these past few days, what do you expect? What kind of thoughts and feelings will come up when you look at these few days?
I think my reflection will be HGMI they don't resist making difficult decisions. And while I've been here, there's been some difficult decisions to make. And maybe some of my coaching may have helped that to move forward a little bit. So there's satisfaction in that. When I continue to see the growth and the development inside the organization, I go, this organization's in good hands. It's in good hands. And now, particularly over the last maybe 12 or 18 months, and there's younger and new leadership taking responsibilities in the organization. They are just quality people. They're just quality people. And so I muse and I think, yeah, it's going to be good year. It's going to be good. They are filled with good people that are going to do good things. And I'm excited to see what the future holds for them.
Well, we are very excited as well. And thank you for your encouraging words. Thank you for being here with us today, in spending time with us in this podcast episode. But also thank you for the past few days that you spent with us and the way you are encouraging us.
Thank you. Real pleasure to be with you, Rika. Thank you so much for this opportunity to chat.